The restaurant was quiet, almost serene, with soft music playing in the background and the faint clinking of cutlery against plates. In a corner, a man sat alone, dressed in a dark suit that matched the dim lighting of the room. He had a calm yet distant presence, and the waiters knew him well enough to leave him alone unless he needed something. Most people assumed he didn't like company, or that he preferred to be left alone. In truth, the man, known quietly among business circles for his immense wealth, had not spoken a word in years. His voice had been taken by an accident long ago, leaving him mute, but his mind and heart were full of thoughts and feelings that rarely found expression. Tonight was like any other Friday evening for him. He arrived promptly at the restaurant, greeted by the familiar nod of the host, and was shown to his usual booth. He didn't order immediately. Instead, he sat back, observing the room around him. Families laughed at nearby tables. Friends shared stories over wine, and couples leaned in close to whisper to each other. He watched them all, not out of envy, but out of curiosity about the connections people shared through words he could no longer speak. The staff had grown accustomed to his silence. They knew the ways he communicated, simple gestures, the occasional written note, or just a look that conveyed what words could not. Even without speaking, there was something commanding about his presence. People who didn't know him would often feel a strange mix of intimidation and intrigue when he was near. But those who worked in the restaurant treated him with gentle respect, understanding that his quiet was not arrogance. He opened his menu, though he already knew what he would order. A private chef in his mansion could prepare meals far superior to anything here. But he came to this place not for the food alone. There was comfort in the routine, a sense of normalcy in being surrounded by strangers yet completely unseen in his own way. The soft hum of conversation and the smell of spices from the kitchen created a space where he could feel part of the world without being fully exposed to it. As he waited for his meal, his thoughts wandered to memories from the past. He remembered the accident that had taken his voice, how the hospital had seemed like a strange, sterile world, and how he had learned to rely on gestures, expressions, and written words to communicate. It had been difficult, isolating, and sometimes frightening, but over the years he had found his own rhythm. His silence had become a companion, a way of moving through life that was both protective and revealing. He had learned to listen in ways others didn't, to notice the small details in people's movements and expressions, and to understand the unspoken language of human interaction. At times, loneliness pressed on him. Even the most successful people need someone to share their thoughts with, someone to laugh with or argue with, someone who understands not just what is said, but what is felt. He had friends, but most knew him only as the distant billionaire, a figure in the news or a voice behind charitable donations. Very few had truly seen the man behind the fortune, the one who could not speak but whose mind raced with ideas, emotions and dreams just like anyone else. As he sat, he noticed a young family being seated at a table not far from him. The child, a little girl with bright eyes and restless energy, immediately caught his attention. She didn't hide from him like most children might when faced with someone so serious-looking. Instead, she glanced his way, curious, and gave a small wave. He watched her for a moment, unsure of how to respond, then gave a tiny nod. It was an insignificant gesture to most, but it felt like a bridge, a connection in a world where he often felt invisible. The waiter approached, and he pointed to his usual order, a meal he had grown fond of over many visits. There was a brief exchange of notes, some smiles, and then the waiter stepped away, leaving him in his familiar solitude. He took a moment to enjoy the environment, the quiet music, the gentle buzz of conversation, the scent of roasted vegetables and freshly baked bread. It was a small, ordinary pleasure, but one that grounded him in the moment, a reminder that even without words, life had textures and rhythms to be savored. He thought about how he had once tried to explain his world to others, how difficult it was for people to understand a life without voice. Some pitied him, others admired his resilience, but most simply didn't know how to interact with someone who couldn't speak. Over time, he had stopped trying. Silence had become his language, and he had learned to listen with a depth that few people ever experienced. He noticed the flicker of emotion in people's eyes, the small gestures that betrayed joy, sadness, or frustration. He understood more from watching than many did from speaking. As he picked up his fork, he glanced at the girl again. She was drawing something on a napkin, her tongue peeking out slightly in concentration. She looked up and met his gaze, and for a moment, The noise of the restaurant seemed to fade. There was something pure and unself-conscious in the way she looked at the world. He felt a faint smile tug at the corner of his lips, a sensation he hadn't allowed himself to feel so freely in years. It was a small, silent acknowledgement of another human being, and it mattered more than any conversation could. For Alexander Ward, the billionaire who sat alone in a corner booth every week, the world continued in its usual rhythm. Yet something had shifted in that brief exchange. There was a reminder that connection could come in the smallest, simplest forms, that even in silence there was a chance for understanding, for recognition, for being seen. And though he would return home to his quiet mansion, to the routines that had shaped his life, he carried with him a flicker of curiosity and warmth sparked by the presence of a small, unafraid child. As he finished his meal and prepared to leave, he felt a subtle change in the air around him, an invisible thread stretching toward the table where the little girl and her family sat. It was a small beginning, almost imperceptible, but for him it held a quiet promise, a promise that even in a world of silence, moments of human connection could appear unexpectedly, breaking through the isolation that had long defined his life. And for the first time in a long time, he looked forward to the possibility of tomorrow, of seeing the world not just as a place to endure, but as a place where unexpected connections could quietly, powerfully change everything. The little girl had been drawing quietly on her napkin, but something about the man in the corner seemed to have captured her full attention. She leaned forward slightly, tilting her head as if she were trying to understand him. He noticed her gaze and offered a small smile, a gesture so subtle that only someone truly paying attention could see it. Most adults would have avoided eye contact with him, assuming his silence meant he wanted to be left alone. But the girl had a curiosity and innocence that allowed her to act without fear or hesitation. She scribbled a quick sketch, then held it up for him to see. It was a simple drawing of a smiling sun with rays stretching outward. He looked at it, then at her, and nodded in appreciation. The girl's face lit up with a quiet triumph. This simple exchange, small and seemingly insignificant, was the start of a connection neither of them had expected. The restaurant around them continued its usual rhythm, but the two shared a quiet world of their own. He watched the way she fidgeted with her pencil, the way her eyes sparkled when she smiled, and the way her fingers moved with deliberate care as she signed little gestures she had learned at school. The girl had recently begun learning basic sign language, mostly for fun, but also to communicate with friends in her class who were deaf. She didn't know the man in the corner was mute, but she sensed something different about him, something inviting. Curiosity got the better of her, and she signed a simple greeting she had practiced in class, pointing to herself and then moving her hand toward him. He blinked, a mixture of surprise and delight crossing his face. He had not expected anyone to attempt communication in his language, not here, not anywhere. Slowly, he raised his hand and returned the gesture. The girl's eyes widened and she giggled softly. She had found someone who could understand her, even without words. The man began to use more signs, forming simple phrases he had memorized over the years. He asked her about her drawing, and she responded with shy gestures, telling him about the sun and why she had drawn it. Her parents glanced over, confused at first, then amazed, as they realized that their daughter was communicating fluently with a complete stranger without uttering a single word aloud. It was a magical moment, pure and unfiltered, and the adults around them sensed it. He signed slowly, carefully, as if each movement carried weight. She mirrored his gestures, sometimes hesitating, sometimes smiling with pride at getting it right. The conversation between them became a delicate dance of hands and expressions. Laughter bubbled up from the girl, silent yet radiant, and he responded with his own quiet amusement. The entire restaurant seemed to fade into the background, leaving only the two of them in this shared bubble of understanding. The young girl's mother leaned toward her daughter, whispering gently, "Go on, honey, he's enjoying it too." The girl nodded and continued signing, asking simple questions about the man's favorite things, his day, and if he liked the restaurant. He answered, patiently, signing back with care, describing his favorite dishes, the quiet joy of routine, and how he enjoyed coming to this place every week. For the first time in years, he experienced a conversation that was unforced, genuine, and free from the weight of expectation that had long burdened him. As they communicated, he noticed something remarkable about her approach. She didn't rush. She didn't try to impress. She signed with sincerity, fully present in the moment. For him, this was a rare gift. Most people focused on his wealth, his reputation, or his silence, but she focused on him as a person, and that made all the difference. They moved from simple greetings to small stories. She told him about a class project she was excited about a game she had played with her friends, and about a pet she adored at home. He listened intently, signing back encouragement, sharing small insights about patience, observation, and the joy of noticing details in everyday life. It was a delicate exchange, a subtle weaving of two worlds that rarely intersected. The waiters and other diners began to notice. Whispers spread quietly, a mix of amazement and curiosity. The man who usually dined in solitude was animated in ways they had never seen. His eyes sparkled, his hands moved with purpose, and he leaned forward just slightly, fully engaged in this silent conversation. The little girl's parents exchanged glances, speechless, realizing that their daughter had bridged a gap they had assumed was impossible to cross. Time seemed to stretch. Plates were cleared, new dishes arrived, but the pair remained engrossed in their dialogue. He shared tiny gestures about the city, places he liked, and quiet moments of beauty he had witnessed over the years. She responded with wonder, pointing out things she loved and noticed in her own small world. It was a meeting of perspectives different in age and experience, yet aligned through understanding and empathy. At one point, he signed a question she didn't understand immediately. She tilted her head, puzzled, and he repeated it slowly, exaggerating the gestures in a way that made her laugh. She caught on and signed back, clearly proud of herself. The simplicity of joy in learning, the triumph of communication, and the laughter that came without sound filled both of them with a quiet happiness that was profound in its own way. As the meal came to an end, he gave her a small note, scribbled in neat handwriting, inviting her to return next week if she liked. She read it, her eyes shining, and nodded vigorously, signing a promise to come back. Her parents, amazed and slightly overwhelmed, thanked him for engaging with their daughter, understanding that this moment was more than a casual interaction. It was a rare and meaningful connection that neither family nor stranger would soon forget. The man left the restaurant quietly, as he always did, but this time with a sense of anticipation rather than solitude. He had discovered something he hadn't felt in years, the quiet excitement of shared understanding, the thrill of connecting with someone genuinely, without pretense. The little girl had opened a door, one that words could not have unlocked, and he felt lighter, almost as if a small burden had been lifted. He walked through the evening streets, thinking about the simplicity and honesty of the interaction. So often, life demanded performance, conversation, and explanation, but here, there had been none of that. Just hands, eyes, and smiles. He felt grateful, not for the attention or the novelty, but for the simple reminder that connection could appear in the most unexpected places, through the smallest of gestures. For the girl, the experience was equally transformative. She had met someone unlike anyone she had ever seen before, a man who didn't speak but communicated in ways that were rich and meaningful. She felt empowered, proud, and excited to see him again. She didn't fully understand the depth of his life, his silence, or the complexities that came with it, but she understood enough that people could connect beyond words, and that small acts of courage could spark magic. In that quiet restaurant, amid ordinary sounds and smells, a bond had begun, one of those rare bonds that didn't need explanation, that didn't require the noise of the world to validate it. It existed simply because both were present, attentive, and open-hearted. It was the start of a relationship that would grow in small, unassuming ways, rooted in understanding, patience, and the shared language of gestures and empathy. The following week, the man returned to the restaurant at his usual time. The air was filled with the soft hum of conversation, the warm scent of freshly baked bread, and the gentle clinking of dishes. He moved to his corner booth and sat down quietly, his eyes scanning the room as he often did. He was not surprised to see the little girl there, sitting with her parents at a nearby table, her notebook open and her pencil in hand. She spotted him instantly and waved, her excitement barely contained. He returned her wave with a small smile, feeling a warmth he had not felt in years. The girl leaned forward, and he noticed her hands moving with the careful, practiced motions of sign language. She had clearly been thinking about this meeting all week. He responded in kind, signing a greeting that she understood immediately. Her parents exchanged glances, amazed at the effortless communication taking place. The man had never seen such natural curiosity and courage in someone so young. He felt a gentle stir in his heart, a reminder that genuine connections could appear when least expected. The conversation began slowly, with the girl asking questions about him, his favorite food at the restaurant, and if he liked to read. He answered in short, precise signs, describing his preferences and the small joys he found in simple routines. She listened attentively, her eyes wide with fascination. She asked questions with such sincerity that he could not help but respond in detail, sharing tiny pieces of his life that he rarely revealed to anyone. It was an exchange built on trust, patience, and the quiet excitement of discovering someone new. He noticed the girl had brought along a small sketchbook. She showed him drawings of her family, her school, and even some imagined scenes from books she had read. He leaned in to see them more closely, signing his admiration for her skill and creativity. She beamed, her pride shining through without a single word spoken. He had long forgotten the joy of such unfiltered recognition, and it touched him deeply. This small girl, with her simple gestures and wide-eyed curiosity, had reminded him of something he had almost lost: the delight in shared human experience. They moved from drawings to stories. She told him about a game she played with her friends, carefully signing each detail. He responded with his own signs, offering small insights and encouragement, explaining how he found joy in noticing small details and appreciating the world around him. The way she absorbed his words, her face lighting up with understanding, made him realize how much he had missed the simplicity of genuine conversation. In her, he saw the untainted joy of curiosity and learning. As the evening progressed, he noticed the reactions of the other diners. People were discreetly watching, but no one interrupted. They sensed the special connection forming, and a hush of respect seemed to settle over the room. The girl's parents whispered quietly to each other, astonished by the depth of communication happening without a single spoken word. The man who had once been seen as distant and untouchable was now animated, engaged, and smiling in a way that had not been witnessed before. At one point, the girl asked a question that made him pause. She wanted to know why he didn't speak, and her curiosity was honest and simple, without judgment. He took a moment, then carefully signed a brief explanation of the accident that had taken his voice long ago. She nodded solemnly, processing the information with the seriousness that only a child's honesty could carry. Instead of fear or pity, she offered empathy in its purest form, signing back words of understanding and encouragement. He felt a lump in his throat, an emotion so powerful it transcended the limits of his silence. Their conversation turned toward dreams and ambitions. She told him about the things she wanted to learn, the skills she wanted to develop, and the places she wanted to see. He listened intently, signing advice drawn from his own experiences, teaching her the value of patience, observation, and perseverance. He shared small stories about his own learning and growth, carefully choosing what to reveal. The girl's excitement and curiosity reminded him that knowledge and connection were treasures to be shared, and that even a quiet life could be filled with profound experiences. At times, they would pause, just looking at each other, communicating through expressions and gestures rather than words. He could see the spark of understanding in her eyes, the joy of connection that transcended age and circumstance. She would draw something quickly, show it to him, and he would respond with a sign of approval or a subtle smile. Each interaction, though brief, strengthened their bond, building trust and mutual respect. The restaurant staff moved around them quietly, careful not to disturb the delicate rhythm of their conversation. Some offered small smiles or subtle nods, sensing the unusual beauty of the interaction. No one intervened, recognizing that this was not ordinary chatter. This was a unique connection that deserved space and reverence. The man who had always been seen as reserved and inaccessible was now alive in ways the restaurant had never witnessed. Time passed almost unnoticed. Meals were served and cleared, and the girl continued to engage him with stories, questions, and drawings. She asked about the world beyond the restaurant, about the city and the places he liked to visit. He signed back with care, describing experiences and observations he had accumulated over years of quiet reflection. He found that sharing these small pieces of himself brought unexpected joy, a sense of fulfillment that had long been absent from his life. At one point, he pulled out a small notebook and began writing brief notes to accompany his signs, ensuring she could fully understand his meaning. She read them eagerly, signing responses with energy and enthusiasm. The exchange became richer, a blend of written and signed language creating a tapestry of communication that neither of them could have imagined. In those moments, he realized how much he had underestimated the power of human connection, how even silence could be filled with meaning when approached with openness and care. As the evening drew to a close, he gave her a small note, a gesture of encouragement and an invitation to continue their meetings. She read it carefully, then signed a promise to return. Her parents, witnessing this extraordinary interaction, expressed gratitude, but the man simply nodded, content with the quiet satisfaction of the bond he had formed. It was a connection free from judgment, free from expectation, and rooted entirely in understanding and empathy. Walking out of the restaurant, he felt a lightness in his chest, a subtle yet profound shift. For the first time in many years, he looked forward to returning, to continuing the conversations that had rekindled something within him. The little girl had reminded him that life could be rich, meaningful, and full of surprises, even for someone who had long lived in the quiet of his own world. Meanwhile, the girl left the restaurant feeling proud and inspired. She had met someone extraordinary, someone who communicated in a way she had never experienced before. She had learned that courage and curiosity could bridge gaps that seemed impossible to cross. Her excitement about seeing him again and sharing more of herself was tangible, a spark of anticipation that would guide her actions in the days to come. In the quiet moments after the restaurant had emptied, both reflected on the interaction. The man thought about how rare it was to find someone who approached life with such unguarded curiosity, and how much he had learned from the simplicity and sincerity of a child. The girl thought about the wonder of meeting someone different, someone who had shown her that connection did not need words alone to exist. Together they had discovered something beyond ordinary conversation, a shared understanding, a quiet joy and the beginnings of a lasting friendship. Over the next few weeks, the man returned to the restaurant regularly, always at the same time, always to the same corner booth. The little girl and her family were there most evenings too, and their interactions grew richer and deeper. What had begun as playful curiosity had transformed into genuine friendship. She had learned to communicate with him naturally, reading the subtle gestures in his hands and expressions on his face, while he found himself looking forward to their conversations in a way he had never anticipated. One evening, the girl asked a question that made him pause for a moment. She wanted to know why he always sat alone. Her curiosity was gentle, not probing, just sincere. He signed carefully, explaining that he had spent many years in solitude, both by choice and circumstance. He shared briefly about the accident that had taken his voice, and how it had shaped the way he moved through the world. She listened with quiet attention, nodding, her eyes full of understanding. Instead of pity, she offered empathy, responding with signs that showed encouragement and warmth. In that moment, he realized that he had found someone who saw him, not as a mysterious figure or a wealthy stranger, but as a human being with feelings, experiences, and a need for connection. They spoke about her school, her teachers, her favorite subjects, and the books she was reading. He shared his own love for learning, for observing the world, and for the small joys that could easily be overlooked. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, a mixture of signs, expressions, and brief notes he wrote to clarify meaning. Every exchange strengthened the bond between them, and he felt a quiet joy that was both unfamiliar and deeply comforting. On one particular evening, the girl showed him a drawing she had made of a tree with roots stretching deep into the ground. She explained that the roots represented family and friends. The trunk was life, and the branches were dreams and hopes. He looked at the drawing carefully, then signed a message about how important it was to nurture roots, to grow steadily, and to embrace both challenges and joys. Her parents watched, amazed at the depth of communication, realizing that their daughter had opened a door into a world they had never imagined. The man, usually reserved and distant, seemed alive with energy, smiling often, and leaning forward with interest and curiosity. As their friendship grew, the man began to share small secrets about his life that he had never spoken aloud. He talked about the joy he found in helping others, quietly supporting schools and programs for children with disabilities, particularly those who were deaf or mute. He had always preferred to do this anonymously, not seeking recognition or praise. Now he found himself revealing these things to the little girl, not for validation, but because he felt safe and understood in her presence. She listened attentively, her hands moving in signs that conveyed admiration and respect. The girl's parents began to understand the significance of their daughter's interactions. They realized that she had not only found a friend, but had become a bridge between the man and the world he had long kept at a distance. She had a way of bringing out the best in him, of encouraging him to express himself in ways that words alone could not capture. The restaurant staff noticed the change as well. The man who once seemed reserved and untouchable now shared smiles, signs, and laughter with a small child who had no fear of him. It was a rare and beautiful sight, a silent testament to the power of empathy and connection. One evening, the man asked the girl if she wanted to learn more about sign language. She nodded enthusiastically, and they began practicing together. He taught her new signs, corrected her movements gently, and encouraged her to be patient with herself. She taught him some of the signs she had learned in school, sharing her excitement and pride in her progress. Their sessions became a game filled with laughter, curiosity, and mutual respect. For the man, it was a chance to reconnect with a world of learning and growth that he had long put aside. For the girl, it was a chance to develop skills, gain confidence, and deepen a bond with someone who valued her intellect and kindness. They also began to talk about small plans outside the restaurant. The girl suggested trips to the park, the library, and local exhibitions. He signed back with enthusiasm, promising to accompany her on some of these adventures. The girl's eyes sparkled with excitement at the idea of exploring the world with her friend, and he felt a sense of anticipation and purpose that had long been missing from his life. Each new idea, each small plan strengthened the trust and intimacy between them, building a foundation for a friendship that was both rare and enduring. Over time, the man shared more about his philanthropic work. He spoke of schools he had funded, programs he had supported, and children he had helped without ever expecting recognition. The girl listened, her signs conveying genuine admiration and curiosity. He showed her letters and notes he had received from teachers and children, evidence of the small but meaningful impact he had made in the world. For the first time, he felt comfortable sharing these accomplishments not out of pride, but because he saw in her a kindred spirit who valued kindness and contribution over wealth or fame. The girl also shared her own aspirations, signing about her dream of helping others, perhaps teaching sign language to children who could not hear or speak. He nodded, signing encouragement, explaining how important it was to pursue passion with dedication and compassion. Their conversations were no longer just playful exchanges. They had become moments of mentorship, learning, and shared growth. They challenged each other to think, to reflect, and to engage with the world more deeply. One night, as they were leaving the restaurant together, the girl signed a message of gratitude. She had learned so much not only about sign language, but about patience, empathy, and the beauty of quiet friendship. He responded with a gesture that expressed his own gratitude, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had grown between them. It was a moment that needed no words, a shared understanding that resonated deeply with both of them. Their friendship began to extend beyond the restaurant. The man occasionally invited her and her parents to his private garden, a peaceful space filled with flowers, trees, and quiet corners for reflection. They explored the space together, discussing the plants, the changing seasons, and the simple joys of nature. The girl practiced her sign language. The man guided her gently, and her parents observed with amazement at the transformation in both their lives. It was a space where silence was celebrated, communication was cherished, and connection was nurtured without distraction. Through these weeks, the man discovered something he had not realized he had been missing for years, the feeling of being seen and understood without judgment. The little girl had opened a window into a world he had long kept at a distance, reminding him that even in silence, there could be profound joy, laughter, and companionship. For her part, the girl learned that courage, curiosity, and kindness could build bridges where none seemed possible. They taught each other lessons that could not be measured in words alone. One evening, after a long conversation filled with signs, laughter, and small shared stories, the man signed a promise. He would continue to support her dreams, to teach her what he knew, and to share moments of quiet reflection and learning. She signed back, eyes shining, a promise of her own to meet him with the same curiosity, respect, and excitement each week. It was the kind of promise that transcended ordinary friendship, one built on trust, empathy, and the unspoken understanding that they had become an essential part of each other's lives. As they parted for the night, the man walked home with a sense of fulfillment and hope he had not felt in years. His world, once quiet and solitary, had begun to feel rich with possibility. The little girl had reminded him that connection could come unexpectedly, in small gestures, in shared attention, and in the courage to engage openly with another human being. He understood finally that even silence could be filled with meaning, and that friendship, when nurtured with care and sincerity, could transform a life completely. Over time, the bond between the man and the little girl became stronger, a quiet friendship that transformed both their lives. The restaurant, once a place of routine solitude for him, had become a space of shared laughter, learning, and curiosity. Every meeting carried the promise of discovery, of stories exchanged, and of understanding deepened without the need for spoken words. The girl's bright eyes, her eager hands, and her boundless curiosity had brought light into a life that had long existed in silence. The man began to notice subtle changes in himself. He felt lighter, more open, and more willing to engage with the world around him. He discovered joy in simple interactions, a shared smile, a hand gesture that conveyed understanding, or a drawing that expressed thoughts too complex for words. He looked forward to each meeting not just as a break in routine, but as an opportunity to grow alongside someone who saw him for who he truly was. The girl, in turn, gained confidence, knowledge, and the thrill of discovery. She had found a mentor, a friend, and a source of inspiration in someone who had once seemed distant and untouchable. One afternoon, the man decided to take the girl on a small adventure outside the restaurant. They walked to a nearby park where the trees swayed gently in the wind, and the sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground. He signed to her, explaining the names of some of the trees and the birds they could see. She responded eagerly, asking questions and pointing out details he had not noticed before. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, blending gestures, signs, and expressions into a tapestry of understanding. It was a reminder that the world held beauty in every corner, waiting for those willing to notice it. At the park, they found a quiet bench near a pond. Ducks glided across the water, and the man signed, explaining how he had always found comfort in observing nature. The girl shared her own observations, pointing out patterns, colors, and movements that fascinated her. He nodded, signing words of encouragement, and together they explored the simple pleasures of curiosity, patience, and shared attention. It was a lesson in mindfulness, in appreciating the small details that often go unnoticed in the rush of daily life. As the weeks passed, their friendship continued to grow. The girl introduced him to some of her favorite books, and he showed her letters and notes he had received from children he had helped over the years. She was fascinated by the stories, and he was delighted by her enthusiasm. Their exchanges became a blend of storytelling, teaching, and playful learning. Each moment reinforced the trust and respect between them, and both began to see the world through each other's eyes, gaining perspectives they had never imagined. The man also started to reflect on his life in ways he hadn't allowed himself to before. He realized that his wealth, though significant, had often created barriers rather than opportunities for connection. The little girl reminded him that genuine relationships were built not on money or status, but on empathy, attention, and sincerity. He began to consider how he could use his resources more meaningfully, inspired by the joy and curiosity that the girl had brought into his life. One evening, back at the restaurant, the girl asked him why he had been so quiet for so many years. He signed carefully, explaining that silence had once been a form of protection, a way to navigate a world that didn't always understand him. She nodded thoughtfully, signing back that sometimes silence could be beautiful, but sharing moments and connections made life richer. He smiled, touched by her wisdom and perspective, realizing that even in her youth she understood truths that many adults overlooked. They began to explore ways to give back together. The man introduced her to his philanthropic projects, showing her the impact of supporting education, accessibility, and opportunities for children with disabilities. She listened with fascination, signing questions, ideas, and encouragement. Together they discussed ways to help others, small steps they could take, and the joy of making a positive difference. It was a partnership built on mutual respect, curiosity, and a shared desire to contribute to the world in meaningful ways. The girl's parents continued to watch, quietly amazed. They saw their daughter grow in confidence, empathy, and understanding, and they witnessed the man's transformation as well. He was no longer a distant figure of wealth and mystery. He had become a mentor, a friend, and a role model. Their interactions extended beyond the restaurant into parks, libraries, and quiet corners of the city, where they explored, learned, and grew together. The impact of their friendship rippled outward, touching everyone who observed it, reminding them of the beauty of genuine human connection. One day, the girl asked if she could bring a friend to meet him. He agreed, signing that he was happy to meet new people. The friend, shy at first, quickly warmed to the man's gentle demeanor and the playful communication that had become the hallmark of their meetings. The man taught both children a few new signs, and they laughed together, learning and sharing in a way that transcended spoken language. It was a reminder that connection, once discovered, could expand and multiply, bringing joy to more lives than one could anticipate. As seasons changed, their friendship deepened. They celebrated small milestones, like the girl mastering a new set of signs or the man completing a new charitable project. Each achievement was shared with joy and encouragement, reinforcing the bond between them. The restaurant remained their anchor, a place of continuity and comfort, but their relationship had grown beyond its walls, extending into the world in ways that brought meaning and fulfillment. Through all of this, the man came to understand the true power of connection. The little girl had shown him that even in silence one could communicate profoundly, teach lessons, and inspire change. She had reminded him that kindness, attention, and empathy could bridge gaps that seemed insurmountable. And in turn, he had offered her guidance, mentorship, and a glimpse into a world where giving and learning went hand in hand. Together they had created a shared universe, small yet powerful, built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. One evening, as they prepared to leave the restaurant, the man signed a message to the girl. He expressed gratitude, not only for her friendship, but for the way she had reminded him of life's small joys and the importance of human connection. She responded with a shy smile, signing that she had learned so much from him and hoped to continue growing together. It was a moment of quiet celebration, a mutual acknowledgement of the profound impact they had had on each other's lives. The man walked home that night feeling a sense of completion and hope. His world, once defined by solitude and silence, had been transformed by the curiosity, courage, and warmth of a small child. The girl, meanwhile, reflected on the lessons she had learned about empathy, resilience, the beauty of silence, and the power of shared moments. They had taught each other more than words could convey, and the impact would stay with them for years to come. In time, the man and the little girl became inseparable friends, their relationship a quiet testament to the power of human connection. The restaurant remained a sacred place of meeting and memory, but their bond extended far beyond its walls. They explored, learned, laughed, and supported each other, creating a story that would be remembered not for its wealth or fame, but for its heart, its sincerity, and the simple truth that genuine friendship can change lives in ways no one could predict. In a world full of noise, their silence had spoken volumes, proving that connection, care, and understanding can flourish anywhere, even in the quietest corners of life. Several months had passed since the man had first begun meeting the little girl at the restaurant, and their bond had grown into something extraordinary. What had started as simple gestures and shared drawings had evolved into deep conversations, quiet mentorship, and a friendship that filled both their lives with joy and purpose. The man had learned to open his heart again, to embrace human connection without fear or hesitation, and the girl had discovered a friend and teacher who inspired her to see the world in new and meaningful ways. One Saturday afternoon, the man decided to take the girl on a trip to the local community center, where children often came to learn new skills and explore hobbies. He wanted her to see the different ways people could communicate and express themselves, especially those who, like him, did not rely on spoken words. The girl was thrilled, her hands moving quickly with excitement as she signed questions and comments. She had grown confident in her abilities, able to communicate fluently and even teach him some new signs she had learned recently. The man smiled quietly, marveling at her progress and her energy. At the community center, they met a group of children practicing various forms of creative expression. Some were drawing, others were dancing, and a few were learning basic sign language. The girl immediately took an interest in a small group learning to communicate with their hands, and the man encouraged her to participate and share what she had learned from him. She eagerly joined, signing explanations and showing examples while he watched with pride. Seeing her interact with others in this way made him realize how much she had grown, and how much joy came from sharing knowledge and kindness. They spent the afternoon exploring different activities. The man noticed how observant the girl had become, noticing the smallest details, asking thoughtful questions, and responding with empathy. She had learned not only to communicate effectively, but to truly listen, something that he had often struggled with in his own life. Her natural curiosity and willingness to engage with the world reminded him that learning and growth never stopped, and that even a child could teach profound lessons about humanity and connection. During a break, they sat on a bench outside the community center, the sun warm on their faces and a gentle breeze rustling the leaves. The girl pulled out her sketchbook, eager to draw what she had seen. The man watched as her pencil moved across the page, capturing scenes of children learning, laughing, and helping each other. He signed quietly, asking about her drawings and offering small encouragements. She responded with joy, explaining the stories behind each sketch. Their silent conversation was rich with understanding, laughter, and shared observation. Later, the man introduced the girl to some of his personal journals, carefully written over years, filled with reflections, sketches, and notes about life, people, and experiences. He signed explanations, showing her how he had captured moments of insight, gratitude, and learning. The girl's eyes widened with fascination, and she eagerly signed questions about his thoughts and observations. He answered thoughtfully, realizing how important it was to share these moments of reflection with someone who could truly appreciate them. In return, she shared her own drawings and notes, and he admired her creativity, patience, and thoughtfulness. They talked about dreams and goals, both for themselves and for others. The girl spoke of becoming someone who could teach and inspire, perhaps helping children who struggled with communication, just as she had learned from him. He nodded, signing encouragement and sharing his experiences, reminding her of the importance of patience, empathy, and dedication. Together, they explored the ways small actions could make a meaningful impact, and how curiosity and kindness could transform lives. It was a lesson that neither of them would forget, a reminder that connection and care were among life's most valuable treasures. During their visit, the man noticed a young boy struggling to communicate with the group. The boy seemed shy and unsure, hesitant to participate. He signed to the girl that they should help him, and she nodded eagerly. Approaching the boy, she began to use the signs she had learned from the man, helping him understand and participate. The boy's face lit up with understanding and relief, and soon he was fully engaged in the activities. The man observed quietly, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. He realized that the lessons of connection, empathy, and patience were now spreading beyond just him and the girl, touching others in meaningful ways. The afternoon continued with laughter, shared creativity, and small discoveries. The girl's enthusiasm was infectious, and the man found himself smiling more freely than he had in years. He saw the world through her eyes, noticing beauty, kindness, and potential in ways he had forgotten. She in turn grew more confident and curious, inspired by his guidance and encouragement. Together they had created a space of learning, understanding, and joy, a quiet sanctuary where connection flourished and barriers melted away. As the day drew to a close, they walked back toward the restaurant, reflecting on the afternoon. The girl signed stories about what she had learned, the new friends she had made, and the moments that had made her laugh. The man responded with signs of pride, gratitude, and shared understanding. He realized how much he had grown in this time, not just in learning, but in living fully and openly, embracing the small joys and meaningful moments that life offered. For her part, the girl understood that friendship could be a powerful source of learning, encouragement, and growth, and that age or experience was not a barrier to making a difference in someone else's life. Back at the restaurant, they were greeted warmly by the staff, who had grown accustomed to seeing their friendship develop. The girl pulled out her sketchbook again, showing the man her drawings of the day's experiences. He signed thoughtful comments, pointing out details she had captured beautifully, and she responded with delighted gestures. It was a quiet, joyful exchange, rich in meaning, and a reminder that learning and connection could take place anywhere, as long as people were present, attentive, and willing to engage. Over the following weeks, they continued to explore new experiences together. The man introduced her to different forms of art, reading, and observation, while she shared her discoveries, questions, and insights with him. Their friendship was no longer confined to the restaurant. It had grown into a network of shared experiences, reflections, and mutual inspiration. Both had changed profoundly. He had learned to embrace connection, and she had discovered the power of curiosity, empathy, and meaningful engagement. One evening, the man signed a reflection about how grateful he was for her friendship, for the way she had helped him rediscover joy, and for the lessons she had taught him about life, connection, and learning. She responded with bright eyes and a smile, signing that she had learned more than she could express and that she hoped to continue growing alongside him. It was a moment of mutual recognition, a quiet celebration of a friendship that had transformed both their worlds. As the seasons changed, their bond became a constant in an ever-changing world. They faced challenges together, explored new ideas, and found joy in the ordinary and extraordinary alike. The man discovered that friendship could be a source of strength, inspiration, and learning, even after years of isolation. The girl realized that guidance, empathy, and encouragement could empower her to pursue her dreams and make a difference in the lives of others. Together, they had created a story of growth, connection, and shared discovery, one that would remain with them for a lifetime. Through every meeting, every shared gesture, and every story exchanged, they learned the power of presence. The man discovered that life could be rich and meaningful without words, while the girl learned that connection, empathy, and curiosity could transcend barriers and bring people together. Their friendship was a testament to the enduring human need for understanding, attention, and care, and a reminder that even in a quiet world, profound impact could be made through small, meaningful interactions. In the quiet moments, as they sat together, drawing, signing, and sharing observations, they both understood that they had changed each other in ways that could not be measured by words alone. Their friendship had created a ripple effect, inspiring others around them and demonstrating the beauty of genuine human connection. The man, once solitary and distant, had rediscovered the joy of engagement and empathy, and the girl had found a mentor, a friend, and a source of inspiration. Together they had built a world of learning, laughter, and understanding, a space where connection and care were celebrated, and where silence spoke volumes.